By far, one of the most common messages that I receive goes something like this: Help, I'm stuck. Okay, not really, but that's what it equates to. And let's unpack some of the common reasons why you may not be able to reality shift, or why you might be stuck in a reality layer that you're not happy in, and you do reality shift, but you're snapped back. And so the first thing we need to do is understand how reality is created. And if you have not already watched my previous videos, start with the first episode, roles and identities, to understand your archetype. And then from there, you will hear nuggets of understanding about how the way you show up in your reality layer is a primary driving force in how it is created. And so when you are unconscious, you have your subconscious patterns that are manifesting on your behalf. The majority of your actions are driven by this projection system that you have in your brain. And so what you see, what you observe, is a reflection of you, and very often your shadow. Not all the time. There are cases where this is not, in fact, true, but for the majority of people, the majority of the time, 80-20 rule, 80% of the time, you can expect that your grievances are a reflection of something within you that you need to resolve. This is a big key. And so shifting away from that principle, shifting away from yourself, almost never works. What ends up happening is that even if you script out this beautiful reality, you show up, you get there, and it either boots you out because the degree, the discrepancy between you and that person that you are trying to shift into is too wide. It's like, I imagine, let's just take a totally random example. You have a dream reality of wanting to be a sea captain. And for whatever reason, you're obsessed with it, right? You have no experience on boats. And you definitely don't have any experience leading a crew of seamen or sea women or sea them. But you have a very detailed script of how you want it to go. And let's say that you magically pop into a reality where you're in the middle of an effing storm. The boat is rocking crazily. You shift in at that exact moment. But you shift in with a consciousness of, let's say, your current position, your current job. And so what would that person do? In that situation, you would not have the skills to be able to captain that ship. And let's say even if you miraculously are able to stabilize the ship, you're not going to be able to have the communication skills or the vernacular or the protocols of understanding to lead a group of people, right? And so sometimes I get messages from listeners that tell me about this reality that is so far away from where they're at, and they are angry, thinking that reality shifting doesn't work because they're not able to shift into being the captain of that ship in that circumstance. And it would be unfair for all of the other people involved, right? If you were to show up without the training, without the skills, without the consciousness, and without the personal work for which to be in that role. And so this is why I advise a lot of people to build an intermediate reality for yourself so you have time to shift and grow into that role. Personal example. I was scared. I don't know why I was scared, but I was scared to pursue my voice and to pursue music. And because I was coming from the scientific world, and I was also scared to pursue things like this and talking about these esoteric experiences, because I come from this PhD program and this world that was kind of, stiff upper lip and your collar's on really tight and you're like, hello, I'm Dr. So and so. Okay, not really, but you get the point. And so I was terrified to step out into a life as an artist. And what I found is that I had this deep calling to be able to sing in front of other people. And even though I come from a musical family, I was in a cappella choir and I have experience singing. And technically, I used to be very, very good, but I was focused on perfection. And as a result, I was a technically good singer, but I wasn't a performer. I really wasn't a performer. And I couldn't connect with the essence of who I was and share that. I was so scared to be seen. And so in my time with karaoke, I would get up there and I eventually did a good job after I worked past the nervousness phase. But it took a long time for me to actually feel like I could sing my work in front of other people. I could sing just a true channel and just be myself. And so what I did is I went to a sabbatical. I created a sabbatical for myself. I practiced in front of other people. I did it in a dark room in a community where nobody was like in the yoga room, and they were all in their rooms and in the kitchen and, having dinner. And then I would just sit in the dark, sometimes by candlelight. And then I would fill the house with music and I would sing. And I would do it in a way to where people could hear me if they wanted to, but it wasn't like I was performing for anybody. And then over time, when I started getting that positive feedback, wow, your voice is incredible. Wow. Because I would go into flow and I would break away from the technical singing and I would open up this channel inside me and I would just let it out, right? So I did this over and over and over again in this intermediate place. And I slowly built up my confidence to when I started working as a psychedelic facilitator in Mexico. I started singing shamanic style, throat singing, and it was like night and day, not even caring what people were thinking. And so I couldn't have just jumped to the ceremonial singing, right? And the way I can hold a room now, the way I can do energy work with this singing, it is beyond this world. And I channel other source energies. I utilize so many different skills and abilities from the esoteric to the material, and I combine them, and it's magical. It's really, really magical. And so I couldn't have just ported myself, right? Think about it for a moment. Really, really think about my story. Imagine for a moment, I'm a reality shifter. I script out that I want to be a psychedelic facilitator in Mexico. I get everything, all of the details down, and I build this reality, and I reality shift into a ceremony. I reality shift into another avatar of myself. And then what happens? If I am still that insecure person that can't open up their voice and can't connect with the essence of beyond because I'm too scared to be seen, then what happens? This potential that I've shifted into, instead of it being this beautiful, magical experience where I'm commanding a room energetically and opening portals and helping people expand their consciousness and touching their souls sometimes, none of that happens. Instead, it's like this meek person shows up and can you Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You see what I mean? This is why the essence of who you are is critically important to understand. And sometimes I lose my patience with people, sorry if you're listening, sorry, who don't want to accept this, who just want to say, I want to get to the reality and this is what I want. And I'm like, okay, but you're going to get booted out of that reality. That's how it actually works. You can get a glimpse of it. You can get a preview of it. And that is a real phenomenon. You get a preview. It's almost like, are you sure you want this? Let's give you a little taste of it. Okay, let's show you the potential. So now you go back and you work on yourself to become a quote vibrational match, energy match, behavioral match. You need to be in alignment with that reality. It does not work for you to just port into a captain's position on a boat that is in the middle of the sea when you don't have any experience. You have to get close enough to where that shift is very, very fluid for you. And I apologize if you're one of those that I lose my patience with when we're talking past each other. And it's just important that this step cannot be skipped. It just can't be. And you have to really, really know yourself to be able to actualize that reality, because what happens is that you end up overriding the reality. Another great example, I was driving out in the desert and I was doing some manifesting and a lot of reality shifting, super big shift events. And I was going into a reality where there was advanced technology and it was cool. There were these little carrier drones that would come up to your car and I couldn't see them, but I could sense them because my eyes, and I hypothesize that a lot of people's eyes are the last to come in. It's such a dominant sense and it's wired to be oriented to an older reality. Like you're literally processing things in the past. That's how the visual system works. So because of that, and because of the continuity conundrum, what happens is that you're visually in an old reality until you break out of that with your eyes, but that takes practice. And so at first you will sense realities and you'll be able to piece them together. And I was shifting in this reality where it was an intermatrix operator that was coming by, sort of like a regulation, like, who is this? Checking in. Okay. And then they spit me out and I got really angry. I got very angry because I had this sense that I had a house there, I had a life there, and I didn't make the cut. And I pulled over on the side of the road. This is one of my outbursts somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle parts of Arizona and the vortex areas of Arizona. I pulled over on the side of the road and I have this like tantrum. It was pretty intense because I was like demanding that I get to my place and where do you know who I am? And they're like, yeah, we do. Yeah, no, you don't get in. There's no pass. You don't get to go. Sorry. But I had this like desperation because I could feel this amazing energy and I was like so excited and also coming out of a nightmare reality. And I was like, let me in. And they're like, no, you're not the right person. You're not the right analog or avatar. So realities will actually gatekeep themselves. And I've been booted out a couple of times. This is how I know this effect. And there's an evaluation process because there are metrics for certain reality layers that you're trying to get into. And if there is a regulating force or entity or group or organization, they are very picky because they should be. I'll just leave it at that. They should be. And just because you want to go there doesn't mean that you're ready, right? And especially if your social skills are at a certain level, if you're still in your shadow, if you're stealing from people, if you're, like misrepresenting yourself and your intentions, if you're actively in a villain role, if you're just simply unconscious or you're dominated by lower sentient urges and are disconnected from your empathy and have like no heart, then obviously you're going to be locked out of a lot of the realities. That's just it, because some of these are privileged areas that are, I don't want to say heaven-like because that paints the wrong picture. It's not about religion, but they're beautiful places to be with other people that have done the work. And there are kids' tables for a reason, and I've been at the kid table for a while, and I think that it's a necessary step. It really is. So that's another reason why you might be stuck, is that you are trying to level yourself up, but instead of leveling yourself up, you're focused on getting to the end of the rainbow where there's a pot of gold, but you actually haven't done the work. It's like you're trying to get a promotion at a job that you don't even work at the company. And so you have to understand who you are and how you're behaving to understand what is the reality that you're creating, because if you go there, you're still going to create the same. That's the point. It's like if you don't solve the problems here, you're just going to port the problems with you. And this is just a known fact. So you have to go through this upgrade, and shadow work is a big part of it. You need to really understand your subconscious, your triggers, your all of the ways that you sabotage yourself. And this is a big part of the reality shifting coaching. Like, do you still have scarcity mindset? Are you still disempowered? Are you still in a victim role? I was for a very long time. I also had to work through scarcity mindset. And there's just so many flavors. And depending on your archetype, I'm betting that if you haven't done the shadow work, you have a lot of shadow work to do. A lot. And so there is a lock on reality shifting for you, unless you're just going to another version where the lesson is going to be held constant, but the people may change. And that does happen. That's what I observed as well. You can shift, and then you're still going to have the underlying pattern, but you end up wasting time. Like, I like to think about it. I don't have time to go into specific examples, but I do have clear examples that I can share with you at another point. But it's like you've been in a relationship for, let's say, 3 years, and it blows up in your face because you have this deep fear of love. And so as a result, you behave in a certain way, which then triggers your partner who also has a fear of love. And finally, the triggers get to the point that they're just untenable, and the relationship implodes or explodes dramatically. It can go a couple different ways. And so you're like, okay, well, I'm going to reality shift to my next, divine counterpart or to another version of them. But you haven't done the work, right? And so energetically, you're not going to be able to connect with anybody truly different. Even though you might connect with different people, you're going to have to start the relationship over. You have to fall in love. You have to go through that process. And so it wastes time, because then it's like, okay, now it took another 5 years before it blew up in your face, but you're still at the same position. You see what I mean? And so it's like you've reality shifted, or you have taken a different path. There are two ways to go there. And you end up in the same place. And this is the problem with some of the techniques of reality shifting that don't give this understanding of how it works from a holistic perspective, or are taught by people that have already done the work and are already at the point where all they have to do is script it out and shift into a new reality. In my experience, most people have patterns that they have to break before they can shift into a reality that is substantially different. You can reality shift without doing the work, and you just shift into another version of the underlying pattern, because this is Earth School. And it's about consciousness. It's about upgrading oneself. And it is about contributing to a greater whole in society. But when we are at the early stages of this, we're very focused on hedonistic pleasures or getting to a certain type of experience that feels good. We're focused on the feel good. And this is normal, right? This is absolutely normal. But at a certain point, we realize that the feeling good stops feeling good because there's something within us that is ruining it. Or, I shouldn't say it like that, but it's like we have a Christmas present from the universe, and then we enjoy opening the Christmas present, and then somehow, through a variety of factors, it ends up exploding in our face. So, a lot of people that are trying to reality shift are trying to shift away from the exploding in the face realities without doing the work to really understand why it is exploding in their face. And this is why you can be tethered. And especially if you're tethered with a soul partner where there's a vibrational match. That means that, like a twin flame or a soulmate type of relationship, that means that there's this agreement to help each other level up and to help each other grow. And when you're tethered to a soul partner, it's hard to shift out of a reality unless they're shifting with you, or unless you start upgrading yourself and transmuting the reality to connect with a different version of them that is also upgraded. Because there is a mirroring effect, especially on the twin flame journey. If you do the work, you get to shift into a reality where they're doing the work too. And so it's just a very, very important mechanism to understand why sometimes you can't break away. Now, sometimes in other situations, somebody might have manifested on top of you. You might be in an abusive situation. You might be in an oppressive situation, and those are a little different. That is a opportunity for you to step into your power, to step into your voice, and to step into your creation abilities and to take your power back. And very often, until that happens, you will remain in a position where somebody is manifesting on top of you. And I don't know why these places exist, but they're commonly referred to the nightmare realms because they're pretty horrific. And so if you're in one of those, feel free to reach out to me for advice, because sometimes it's not always evident. And you could be the most loving, compassionate person there is, and that could be your downfall, because maybe you need stronger boundaries. Maybe you need to be able to say no. Maybe you need to manifest and reality shift into a different matrix system. And maybe you need to call on help. Maybe you need to alert systems that there is an issue. Or maybe it's a simulation to help you awaken to the fact that you are a powerful creator, and you don't have to stay in situations where people don't see you, don't recognize you, and don't care about you, or that just want to take and take and take from you. And so there's many different configurations of how those can manifest. But I hope this gives you some insight into some of the common ways that you could be stuck and how to get unstuck. And if you have more questions about your case, feel free to email me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com, and we can go through it and understand what your pattern might be. And then from there, you can decide on how you would like to approach it. If you'd like to do coaching with me, or if you'd like to do independent work or work with somebody else, I am happy to give you insight into the pattern that I think is active for you. Okay, we'll talk soon.